James is talking about the Old Testament.
There we go. I don't know how long we were out, but I'll be talking more about these sorts of things. So I'm on to the Old Testament here. This is the fourth and final volume, the NIV, Interlinear Hebrew English Old Testament. NIV, what does that stand for? Kind of forgotten. Just say NIV. Yeah, New International Version. So maybe that's the thing to go with if you're looking for a translation into English of the New Testament. I was saying maybe the American Standard Version, American Revised Version, or something like that. But maybe go with, for consistency, go with the NIV, the New International Version, because you don't have to worry about buying it with this edition of the Old Testament in the original Hebrew, because you get the New International Version right here on the side of the page. It's all scrunched down. Doesn't have to be written in large print, because unless you've got some trouble with your eyesight, you'll be able to read English scrunched down that much. The important thing is for someone who wants to learn Hebrew, and I suppose a lot of people who teach Hebrew wouldn't recommend this. I don't recommend it as the only thing to do. The nice thing, I got so many dictionaries in so many different languages, some people might not believe it. Maybe most people wouldn't believe it. At least they wouldn't believe that someone would waste all their time, more than money, because almost all of them are second-hand acquisitions, except some key things like Hebrew. Or my favorite is Akkadian German. Yeah, a German dictionary. It's not even, you wouldn't be able to get anything comparable in English. I do have one, a smaller one in English. So it's the standard one, I gather. It was put out by a former member of the Sturmabteilung, SA. Kind of glitching over what his name was, an eminently forgettable individual. The last time I checked, which is a while back, there was a screamingly funny, but funny in a very tragic kind of way, apologia for this guy, member of the Sturmabteilung, and he died. He survived World War II. So many innocent people died on both sides, like German soldiers who were conscripted and sent, especially teenagers, mid-teens, even younger teens towards the end. They died. But this guy was very guilty. If anyone deserved to die in World War II, it would have been this scumbag. Anyway, it was kind of an apologetic. I'm not interested in apologetics when we're dealing with scumbugs who belong to the Sturmabteilung. What is that? Stormtrooper. It really means storm department. Or, yeah, department. Sturmabteilung. SA. Check it up if you don't believe me. He was a stormtrooper, and they were saying, oh, he wasn't really a Nazi. He was just a stormtrooper. What? You know, like, here's the number of people that were Nazis. The number of people in here is just a subset, okay? It's not as though, like there's an intersection between stormtroopers and Nazis. And it's some of the worst scumbag Nazis of them all. It's hilarious. Anyway, this comes recommended because you can read the English, and it's probably pretty smooth translation. Definitely don't start with the King James Version if you're not a Christian and haven't been introduced to it, because the guy who taught me Hebrew, my first layer of Hebrew, and the half of my second layer, was a graduate of Harvard, and somewhere along the line, when I was taking the first semester of Hebrew, he ran into a little bit of trouble with one word. Wanted to look at he was using Brown, Briggs and Driver, or whatever, BDB, Brown, Briggs, Driver, I think is what it is, which is the standard Hebrew English dictionary. And he was just having trouble. I mean, these sorts of things happen. can't memorize every word in Hebrew unless you're real expert at biblical Hebrew. Vocabulary is not huge, but still. Anyway, he wanted to get a translation. So he said, anybody got a translation of the Old Testament here? And a Mennonite woman handed over her copy of, she was a very good student. And I think on average she was as good as I was. I think I did better than her slightly on the final. And the 2 midterms or so, she slightly beat me. She's a very, very good student. Anyway, she handed it over. He looked at it, and all he said was, God, that's an awful translation. So that's the King James Version from an expert on Hebrew. On the Semitic languages generally, don't bother with the King James Version. Some of the stuff seems poetic, but some of that is because it's just bad translation, and it seems, like that's a trope or something like that. That's metaphorically speaking. And here we go with a little bit of philosophy. I warned you there'd be something that's kind of like philosophy. This is natural philosophy. This used to be called science. Science used to be called natural philosophy. And this is Isaac Newton, supposed to be up until, who's that chimp? Albert Einstein. He actually overlapped with my life. He died, I believe, 1955. I remember it like it was yesterday. No, I wouldn't remember it because I was only 1 year old when he died. But his life overlapped with mine. And Einstein's supposed to have surpassed Isaac Newton. Well, no. He's supposed to be such a phenomenal scientist, according to Karl Popper and a few others, but Karl Popper particularly, he said, he set things up so his theory could be falsified. Folks, Einstein's theory was falsified in 1923. The general theory of gravitation, of relativity. The idea in there about gravitation, light being a particle, that in traveling from a source, let's say a source from behind the sun, getting bent by the gravitational field of the sun was not proven in 1919. Arthur Eddington, some people style him most as Sir Arthur Eddington, didn't have the equipment, apparently, and this is studied on fairly recently by someone who tried to duplicate his experiment with the kind of equipment he had. I don't think he had the same equipment, but reconstructed it, and he didn't have the capability to detect the stuff that he claimed to have detected. 1919, that's a washout. I've seen the results of something from 1923, and the stars. When shall the stars be blown about the sky like the sparks blown from a smithy and die? That's William Butler Yeats. How often do you get that? Just don't put a contract out on it. You're getting poetry here from a guy who won a Nobel Prize, I think, way back when in the 30s. Okay. William Butler Yeats, English-Irish poet. Yeats is actually a mispronunciation of sorts of Gates, weirdly enough. Gates, Yeats. Anyway, the Principia. Not the Principia Mathematica. I made a mistake of referring to this a while back as Principia Mathematica. But it's the Principia by Isaac Newton and Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. See, it's natural philosophy, like I said. So, I think it's just called the Principia. It could have been called the Principia. It says Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Maybe that was the full title. I don't know. Anyway, the Principia Mathematica or Mathematica that I know of was put out significantly later, maybe 200 years after, not quite 200 years after Isaac Newton died, and that was put out by Bertrand Russell, another great English thinker. Not everything he said was true, but that's the way things go. Anyway, get ready for a little bit of mathematics here. Now the funny thing is, I don't know if you're going to find an equation in here written in abbreviated mathematical symbology as we do nowadays. The things are put out in are expressed in sentences. They are equations, and so he's trying to make it a little bit like Euclid's geometry and stuff like that. So there's propositions, theorems, lemmas, scholia I should say, and stuff like that. And it's a bad approach to science. Science is about experimentation and experience. It's not about mathematics. It's definitely not a deductive system. It shouldn't be a deductive system. Anything that purports to be science and sets itself up as a deductive system is philosophy at best. Well, maybe mathematics at best and philosophy at worst. So I'll give you an example, roughly rendered. This is from a 20th century physics monograph, not a text, and it must have been about nuclear physics. And basically it says in the introduction, what we've got here is it's so well established that we're going to use these principles as a basis for a deductive system, as basically the assumptions of a deductive system. You notice how, like, you've got your assumptions for a deductive system. You've got your assumptions, which have to be firmly founded. This is what we use in mathematics, and then you build up theorems from that and stuff like that. You have your proposition. There's a deductive logic. There is something that's called inductive logic in mathematics. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about inductive logic. That's the foundation. It's the only foundation for science that we've got, and it's based on the results of experiment. And if you can't do an experiment, experiences. Like when you're looking out at the stars, you can't really experiment with them. Well, what happens if we change the heat of the position of a planet around the star way out there? We detect what we figure is a planet. No, you're experiencing that stuff. But if you set up a deductive system off assumptions, it's only as good as your assumptions. And this is one of the big troubles with 20th century science. Ever since Einstein, it's been based on, like it's supposed to be firmly based on the results of a few observations. It's not even experiments. Or in the case of looking at the displacement of stars in the sun's field, it's actually electromagnetic field. This is what's disturbing making the stars appear around the sun in places where they're not really at or shouldn't be at. It's the electromagnetic field around the sun that's changing. It's specifically the magnetic field, I should say, not the gravitational field. The result I was mentioning from 1923 is it's full of counter examples. The stars are all over the place. The sun's blacked out. This is an observation of a total eclipse of the sun. The sun's blacked out, and you can see they show where the stars show up, and then it shows how far they've been moved. And here's the sun. You see some things that have been moved out the way they should be. Oh, that's nice. The big trouble is, some have been moved inward. Now that's a problem, because gravitation is a one-way force. The only other elementary force that we've got is electromagnetism, and that's two-way. You got north and south, or you've got plus or minus, but you don't have anything like that with a gravitational field. all the results should be away from the sun center. And all of those results should be basically the same, because the sun's gravitational field is fairly uniform. But what's even more disturbing, maybe, than the stars being displaced inwards are the ones that are displaced at a tangent, let's say. There's not just a tangent, some this way, some that way, all over the place. Now, most of the stars are displaced. The what's perceived as a star is displaced from where it would be without the sun being close to the pathway of the light from the star. That's most, but a significant minority. Maybe even it's only a plurality, not even a majority of the stuff is moved away this way, like directly away. Some would be off this way, some at a tangent to the sun's gravitational field or something like that, like a isoline heading up from the gravitational field. Some inwards at a, not like a tangent, but at an angle. Absolutely stupid. That's 1923. It's 102 years ago. Einstein's theory of general relativity was falsified. And scientists, physicists, astronomers have been hiding it ever since. So I suspect what they've done now is they say, oh, this stuff gets moved around because, there are all sorts of electromagnetic disturbances around the sun, and that would be disturbing the paths. Yeah, what we do with this, like there's a guy called Peirce, spelled Pierce, but Peirce, an American philosopher. Charles Sanders Peirce, maybe is his full name, or was his full name, he's long dead. And his idea was something, they style it along with other things like William J. other guys, as pragmatism, stuff done by other guys like William James's pragmatism. So it's whatever works, that's got to be right. Well, that's not good enough. Like the Ptolemaic system of epicycles and stuff like that worked, actually, folks, I'm not making it up, worked apparently better than the Copernican system. Not the Keplerian system, but the Copernican system for explaining what was happening out in the skies. Did it really explain much? No, it just, epicycles were kind of like footnotes added to footnotes added to footnotes. Okay, we can't explain why planets go backwards with respect to other things in the sky, the sun, the back drop of stars. A retrograde motion is called. Over the course of a year, like they'll go backwards and then they'll go forwards most of the time. So Ptolemy came up with this system, let's see, around 200, 250, 380, somewhere around there. Came up with a system of epicycles. So he'd draw a perfect circle, and then there'd be a little circle off that which would explain what was happening. That's not enough. So here's something that someone came up with. I think this is a little after 1000 AD. And it's Occam's razor, Occam, I think is the name of this guy, as rendered in English. Occam's razor. And it's, like to kind of transliterate, it's thou shalt not multiply, I think it's multiply, entities unnecessarily. Now it's important to put in there, unnecessarily. I think he included that in his formulation. Thou shalt not multiply, I put it kind of in biblical terms, thou shalt not multiply entities unnecessarily. So what did Ptolemy do? Well, he chucked in the epicycles. Once you get the Keplerian system, where the where the planets don't follow circular orbits but elliptical orbits, then you don't need these epicycles. So, it works better. Why? You can come up with all sorts of footnotes to explain this, that, and it's called ad hoc explanations to explain stuff. But what we should be looking for, and not because it's elegant, but because it's simpler, but what we should be looking for are elegant solutions, elegant kind of theories, elegant models. What do I mean by elegant? As I was suggesting, they are efficient. They don't need a lot of footnotes and stuff like that. So we can say, oh, as I suspect astronomers, scientists generally do, to explain away what is happening to the appearances of these stars as observed around an eclipse, a total solar eclipse. Oh, it's the lights getting bounced around by the electromagnetic fields around the sun. Well, that means, specifically the magnetic fields, are messing around with energy coming off of stars from behind the sun. And if they can mess around with them that much, moving this way, and why not say they can move it this way? So what they've probably done, this is the way science doesn't work, pretends to work, is, oh, we've got to allow a certain amount, this is happening, and then these electromagnetic fields are bouncing the stuff around. No, just eliminate the idea that light is a stream of photons. Just eliminate that. Light is a wave. It comes from a star. The wave's coming from a star. The wave gets disturbed coming through not the gravitational field of the sun, the electromagnetic field of the sun. And it's not a combination of photons getting bounced around moved by the gravitational field and bounced around by the electromagnetic field. There's no such thing as a light photon. They're only light waves. Okay? Light waves. Light's a wave like sound is. Now scientists got so wild and crazy, they've actually come up with phonons. No need for them. Phonons, which are things that carry sound, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, there we go. Read this stuff. I'm plowing through it right now. Now, you're saying, well, all of this stuff is originally not in English, except for Isaac Newton. Yeah, he's an English guy. But you can get the original. I don't think it comes into translation. Put out an edition that was kind of coordinated by Stephen Hawking. The original's in Latin, okay, folks? I don't recommend you start off reading Isaac Newton. He's hard enough to read in English. In Latin, because Latin's a tough language to learn, because there's a lot of grammar there. I know one person who goes around, strutting around with wanted to get a job teaching English at university, had a BA in English, which is no more than I've got, then got a master's in fine arts in writing, I suspect it was just writing poetry, and then a PhD in, what was it? Medical humanities, from the 400th plus worst university or best university in the world. So not even the top 400 list, the University of Manitoba. And the University of Manitoba, I've actually visited the library there, and it's a pretty good library. It's probably a pretty good university. Top 400, that's about the level of the University of Magdeburg in Germany. Got nothing against it. But I can remember mentioning to my brother, who had a PhD in English, this PhD in medical humanities, and he sounded like Edith Prickley when she was playing, Edith Prickley, played by Andrea Martin Yeah. I can't render it as explosively as Andrea Martin. Pah! Yeah. Medical humanities. Anyway, this poor benighted soul was saying, like, I was just mentioning some of the languages that I had a background in, studied at university one level or another. Studying is not the same thing as being able to read something, but that's just the way it goes. But it's many that I've studied at university, twice as many as I've studied at university that I've studied on my own. And she's saying, the languages are related to each other, so many of them, like you can pick it up. Oh, man. I tried to teach this woman Arabic after a year and a half of weekly sessions, 2 hours long, me trying to drag her through it, through Arabic. I was trying to teach her triliterals. Same thing in Hebrew. You learn the triliterals. Basically, the Semitic languages generally are based on verbs. And the verbs are set up so that you have to find out what. There are exceptions. Many, too many, have only two. They're biliterals or whatever. You find out the triliteral, and that tells you how you set up the verb. And basically, the majority of nouns are derived from these triliterals. So they'll chuck a few prefixes on, suffixes on to derive nouns from these triliterals. Oh, when we ran across, we were trying to do translation. I was trying to teach her from just translating stuff. What's the triliteral here? Well, I see 4 letters here, like it's M, and I'm going, yeah. Like if she were looking at Muslim, or as people mispronounce it, Muslim, in English. She'd say, well, there's 4 letters there. A quadriliteral. M, S, L, M. No. Like I was saying, M is one of the favorite things in Semitic languages to add to the beginning of a triliteral. So that's what I was trying to tell her. Look for the triliteral. If you know it's SLM in Muslim, then you're on your way to understanding a little bit about Islam. See, it's got SLM in it. If you're looking at the MSL, she'd be saying, MSL, what's that last M in it? Okay. You're in trouble. Salam, SLM. It kind of means peace be unto you or something like that. On and on it goes. How much time? 5?
56 seconds.
56 seconds. So, when you're dealing with Latin, it's not enough to know the vocabulary. And we've got so much Latin vocabulary in English. Auscultation, that's what a doctor does to you with a stethoscope and stuff like that. But, you'd better get ready because the word order is just going to be all screwed up. If you can't understand what's been added to a word, let's say, conjugate a verb or something like that, so on and so forth, it's just not going to work out. Anyway, stay in tune. There'll be more books to read, folks.